it didn't all make sense until he met Prabhupada, right? Because he could see commitment, he could see enthusiasm, he could see genuine display of devotion in these American boys and girls, right? And but he couldn't work out. It's hard to work out what's behind all of this. And the same thing happened to me also. I remember the first day. When I saw the devotees, I was very attracted to the chanting of Hare Krishna. That was the main thing that attracted me, and also the philosophy. But I couldn't work out, where's this all coming from? What's its basis? And it was on Bhaktivedanta Thakur's disappearance day, which we just celebrated the other day, that I went to the temple for the first time. And of course, the first part of the program was to have a kirtan and then to recite, to talk about Bhaktivedanta Thakur. And I was impressed, amazed, that Bhaktivedanta Thakur was such a influential individual, not just from the spiritual point of view, but also from the point of view of his material accomplishments. He was a highly sought after magistrate, and a magistrate in India means a little bit, it's more than what a magistrate is here in Australia. Of course, magistrate is an important position. So the British officials, if you like, they would squabble over who would have Bhaktivedanta Thakur in their district, because he was such a competent manager, effectively. That's a magistrate had a much more powerful position than the magistrates that we're aware of in the current day and age. So, but on top of that, Bhaktivedanta Thakur was an accomplished devotee as well, a preacher, a scholar, a writer, a publisher, right? He embraced the printing press as a means to broadcast the messages of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so maybe I started to get a bit more of a perspective. This is not... And then after we had the reading, kirtan, this is a standard Hare Krishna program, kirtan, reading, arti, what's next? What's going on here? What's next? Prasadam, yes. The prasadam. Like I said to the devotees the other day, I was intrigued by the philosophy, but I was convinced by the prasadam. So, after the prasadam, then the devotees set up. We used to have these things called Fairfield projectors, and they were a box, if you like, and you kind of opened them up and they had a screen on the front and, controls. And inside was was it a cassette? Was it slides? I think it was slides, but it might not have been. I think it was a cassette, but it was a sizable cassette, quite big, and you pushed it in, turned it on, and then it had a soundtrack, and it was like a mini presentation system. And the presentation, the name of that presentation was The Life and Times of Sri Chaitanya. I don't know if you've seen that. video. Actually, I think it was slides. Can't remember. But anyway, and so I'd had Bhaktivedanta Thakur before, and then the life of, who was Lord Chaitanya. So I had the perspective of the modern era, if you like, if Bhaktivedanta Thakur could be called the modern era. Certainly in the context of, the parampara coming from Lord Brahma, Bhaktivedanta Thakur is in the modern era, right? Realistically, it's a modern era. And seeing Lord Chaitanya and seeing and so, and that portrayed Lord Chaitanya, Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan mission, Sankirtan movement, right? So when I left the temple on that day, had a huge impact on me, because then all of a sudden everything that the Hare Krishna devotees were doing just it made sense, fell into place, for me anyway. Because it made the activities of the devotees, the kirtan, the sankirtan, the book distribution, the temple, the activities of the devotees, just made it all make sense, had some context. Right? And this is what Stilson Judah said. When he met Srila Prabhupada, then everything made sense, right? Because then you get the activities of the devotees and their source, if you like. So the association of the Hare Krishna devotees, even though, initially it may be culturally a cultural clash, if you like. Tilak, bald heads, robes, artis, pujas, etc., etc. That's quite challenging for people. Quite challenging. For you guys, maybe not so challenging, but for me it was a big challenge. Shaved heads, that's not cool. And you can't wear your jeans, what's going on here? Right? So anyway, the association of the devotees, even though it may be, you meet some devotees and some of the devotees that I met, they were quite odd. Not only just the fact that they individually were unique people. Where's this guy at? Right? And, because Srila Prabhupada didn't really compromise on any of these things, right? Prabhupada just strong presentation of the culture, regardless of what the reactions of people were. And of course, that's because Srila Prabhupada, and also in our case, we don't have any qualms with these things, because we understand the importance of the association of the devotees and the importance of the bhakti culture, if you like, and all of the elements that come with it, because of the potency, the power of that association. Even if the devotees weren't the most advanced individuals, still that association is powerful. Why? Because in the association of those devotees, we're going to be regularly hearing and chanting about Krishna. This is what, even if it's not a very advanced devotee, that's what they do. And that's how not very advanced devotees become advanced devotees, right? Srimatam sva kata Krishna punya shravana, right? By hearing, pious activities are performed. Not just material, mundane pious activities, but purely spiritual pious activities that cleanse the heart. Right? So even a so-called little devotee is a big individual, a powerful personality, because they've embraced this process, this and you know, the Mayavadi sannyasis were criticizing Lord Chaitanya without and you know, Tapan Mishra and Chandrasekharacharya, they were fairly simple devotees. But Lord Chaitanya chose to be with them rather than with the big, you know, scholars, Mayavadis, because even though they're big scholars, they've come to the wrong conclusion. And the simple-hearted devotees, even though they may not be great big pundits, and they weren't, you know, Chandrasekharacharya and Tapan Mishra described as pure devotees, but Kanishta Adhikari, right? This is how it's described by Prabhupada. So Lord Chaitanya chose to be with them rather than with the prominent scholars, if you like, because the simple-hearted devotees had understood the purport, if you like, the message of the Vedanta and of the Vedas, and that is to associate with the devotees means to two things. Here Prabhupada mentions chant Hare Krishna, and so Prabhupada mentions we chant Hare Krishna to purify the heart, right? And then with that purification, we then study the Bhagavatam, right? Srimatam Sva Katha Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridyantastoya Bhadrani Vidu Noti Suritsatam. By rendering service, right, through hearing. Then the Abhadrani. Bhadra means auspicious, Abhadra means inauspicious. And that's mentioned here also. Well, maybe it's not. Let's see. Oh, yeah, it's mentioned here. And this is the important, you know, again, it's in this verse it's mentioned here. Harat yajonta srutipi katongajam. Right? So this angajam is the dirty things, right, in the heart. And it's interesting because this is comparing the association of devotees. This verse is comparing the association with the devotees with the continuous practice of taking bath in the Ganges, in the Ganga, right? And the Bhagavatam is saying that the association of the devotees is more important than associating with the Ganges. And even though one can be purified, completely purified, by taking bath in the Ganges, the association of the devotees who are constantly engaged in glorifying Krishna, right? Mukunda Vikramam, the supreme, the glorious activities of Mukunda, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that's more powerful. And why? Because you can be taking bath in the Ganga, but your heart isn't being fully purified. Right? The taking bath in the Ganga is powerful and purifying, but still there may remain material attachments. And so the best way is described here. The best way is to associate with the devotees, because what happens? What happens if we associate with the devotees? And here, Nija Virya Vaibhavam, whose influence is uncommon. Right? The association of devotees is powerful. I remember when I first saw the devotees, I thought, whoa, what are these? You know, it was a shock. It was a shock to see Gaura Mandala Bhumi playing a mridanga I told you, you heard this story before? You have. He has, you can see the whites of his eyes. It's just the way. And so, when he would lead the kirtan, he'd be intensely absorbed in the kirtan, but he'd be looking around. You can see the whites of his eyes and be like, whoa, I thought, these guys are out to get me. And I thought, if you get mixed up with these people, then you're finished. That's it. Which is true. Your material life is finished. Right? Material life is finished and spiritual life is... And I remember visiting the temple to buy a cookbook. I was already a vegetarian, so... And, there were about 3 vegetarian cookbooks in Adelaide at that particular point in time. And I knew that the Hare Krishnas had a cookbook, so I went to the temple to buy the cookbook. And I remember talking to the devotees and especially later on Guru Mandala Bhumi, and he wouldn't talk about anything other than Krishna. Couldn't mention anything not related to Krishna. I thought, well, this is hard to talk to these guys. You have to talk about Krishna all the time. So the association of devotees is extraordinary. It doesn't, because we're associating with the devotees all the time, and so we just that fella, this fella, she did this, she did that. We take the devotees for granted because we're associating with the devotees all of the time. But when you come in contact with the devotees for the first time, and it's a extraordinary experience and a life-changing experience if one can take advantage, as you mentioned in the previous. If we can take advantage of the association of the devotees, then that means material life is finished, spiritual life is assured, perfected. Right? Because in the association of the devotees we get an opportunity to glorify Krishna. And through that process of glorification, by chanting Hare Krishna and by regularly hearing or studying the Bhagavad Gita, the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada says here, then gradually one establishes, well, first of all, one purifies the heart. All of the abhadrani, the negative, the inauspicious detritus, I think is a good word, right? The rubbish of material existence that's floating around in the heart, that gradually gets destroyed through this. And it's so simple. It's just hearing the Bhagavatam every day, right? Nashta prayeshava badreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya. By regularly hearing the Bhagavatam and rendering service under the pure devotee, right? Nityam bhagavata sevaya, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. In this way, simply by hearing of the powerful activities of the Lord, the devotee's heart becomes almost completely cleansed of material contamination. And thus his original position as an eternal servant who is part and parcel of the Lord becomes manifest. Right, so the highest achievement, the pinnacle of spiritual achievement is realised by the association of the devotees through the chanting of Hare Krishna with the devotees and by hearing regularly Bhagavad Gita, Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. Yeah. So we should never underestimate or minimise the association of the devotees. And all of the other things, everything else that we do. Yeah. So Prabhupada mentions here at the end, all the great acharyas strongly recommend that people be given a chance to hear about the Supreme Lord. Why? Because this is the end result. One can come to the highest platform of spiritual achievement. Well, we look at a devotee and we think, just an ordinary guy. But not ordinary. Not ordinary at all. The activities of the Krishna consciousness movement are actually the highest, they're the emblem or the example of the highest realizations of spiritual advancement. And we see that, we look at the activities of Ambarish Maharaj, for example, right? Savai Mana Krishna Padara Vindayo Vachamti Vaikunta Gunana Vanane Karo Hare Mandira Majanadishu Shrutim Acharya Chutta Kato, what is it? Sat Kato Daye, right? We look at the activities of Ambarish Maharaj. They're the same as what we do, right? Karo Hare Mandira. What's that? Goes to the temple. Hari Mandir Karo, right? That's what we do. Marjana Adi Shu, what's the first thing he does? Marjana Adi. What's the first thing he does? Cleans the temple. For those of you who think that this is a mundane activity, it is not. It's a level of the highest realization. Huh? Not something that we just palm off to somebody else, thinking it's not as important. But Ambarish Maharaj, who's the ruler of the whole universe, got to remember who Ambarish Maharaj is. What does he do? Make sure that the temple's clean. So, and he associates with the devotees. He hears the pastimes of the Lord. All of the activities that we do. And Ambarish Maharaj is, like the emblem of bhakti. Isn't he? He's the emblem of bhakti. So much so that, he was cursed by Durvasa Muni, who's a big yogi, right? Big, with 30,000 disciples, and he got upset because Ambarish Maharaj broke his Ekadasi by drinking water. and so how disproportionate, right? He got upset because he and his 30,000 disciples weren't greeted properly by Ambarish Maharaj, who had taken an Ekadasi brata, right? And so had to break his fast by a certain time, right? And so he didn't want to offend Durvasa Muni, but at the same time he had a bit of this, these are the kind of conundrums that devotees have to, solve. I've got guests, but I have to break my vow, and it's not proper to eat before your guests. It's cultural thing. Right? So he consulted with his Brahminical advisors, and they said, just drink some water. Right, so what kind of a breakfast is that? Yet Durvasa Muni got upset. What? You took prasada before me? So then he decided to curse him. This is how cursed it, and so he pulled out a hair out of his head, threw it into the ground, and created a demon that was meant to kill Ambarish Maharaj because he broke his fast with drinking some water. This is the Bhagavatam's quite humorous, quite funny sometimes. Right? But Ambarish Maharaj, this is the importance of a devotee. Ambarish Maharaj was protected by Lord Narayan. Right? This is the importance of respecting the devotees, because actually they're very dear to Krishna. Even the little devotees are dear to Krishna, and so we shouldn't offend them. Right? So Durvasa Muni was, got upset, wanted to curse, kill. He created a demon to kill Ambarish Maharaj, but Lord Narayan sent his Sudarshan Chakra, right, to protect Ambarish Maharaj. And so Durvasa Muni, went all over the universe trying to escape the Sudarshan Chakra until he got to Vaikuntha, and he said to Lord Narayan, please protect me from the Sudarshan Chakra. And Lord Narayan said, I can't protect you. You have to first of all go and beg forgiveness from Ambarish Maharaj, the person that you offended. Because Lord Narayan has taken a vow, I'll protect my devotees. So Durvasa Muni had to swallow his pride and go and offer his obeisances to Ambarish Maharaj so that he could get the Sudarshan Chakra off his back, right? So, the importance of devotees cannot be underestimated, should not be underestimated. And it's because the devotees are actually situated on the highest platform of spiritual realization, even if it looks like they're just sweeping the courtyard or performing some routine activity of management or organisation or cleaning or whatever. Management basically is cleaning, keeping everything in fit for purpose, right? Keeping everything clean and in its right place so that it can be ready for Krishna's service the next time you get to do the service. That's what it boils down to. And that is purely transcendental spiritual activity. So we shouldn't minimise the potency, what to speak of the devotees, but the service that the devotees are doing. The service should be done to the highest level of cleanliness, punctuality. Management is effectively deity worship, because most of what we do is designed for worshipping the deities, or especially for the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, management is coordinating the the Harinam party, organising the distribution of books, organising the prasadam distribution. This is all topmost activities of self-realisation. It's at the highest level. Srila Prabhupada, speaking of devotees, has elevated us to the highest level of bhakti. Right? So here, the residents of Jambudvipa are offering prayers in appreciation of the devotees. Okay, anybody got any comments or questions? In the various stages of the development of prema, anatta nivritti is the stage at which one cleanses or purifies the heart from that attachment. And artha means that which is essential, and anartha means that which is not essential, the inessential. So And in the previous verse, the residents of Jambudvip were praying for detachment from family, from home, being attached to, fairly material sense gratification. So the attachment to the temporary, right, and that overrides or obstructs our attachment to the permanent is avoided, if you like, right? Attachment to the temporary, that which has no permanence. Right? So in the what is it? In the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna mentions that of the temporary, what is it? Nasato vijate bhavo na bhavo vijate sataha. Ubayor apayon drishtas tanayos tatvadashabi. So those who are learned, those who are seers of the truth, see that of the temporary there is no existence. Huh? Non-existent, there is no endurance. No endurance, yes. No endurance. It doesn't last. And of the permanent, there is no cessation, right? So, the inessential, the anatta, is attachment to things that are temporary. Right? This is the condensed version. And so therefore, attachment to sense gratification that's not related to Krishna, because we're essential entities, essential beings, right? We have bodies, and bodies means sense. Personality means senses, and senses have to be engaged, right? And even family life and social life and business life, all of these things can't be avoided. Right, effectively, we can't avoid it, but it's used on the spiritual platform, on the spiritual plane, if you like, and so that way, then our existence is purified by those activities where everything we do is connected to us to a spiritual purpose. But yeah, generally speaking, that attachment is to sense gratification or attachment to, inessential, the inessential or the impermanent. Whereas we should be attached to the permanent, to the spiritual, to the fact we're not the body, that we're spiritual by nature. That's your test. Could you please explain a little bit more about it? Why? Kanishta means that they were simple devotees who weren't philosophically astute, and so they weren't able to defeat the arguments of the Mayavadis, right? And so that's one symptom of a Kanishta Adhikari. They had a strong faith in their devotional practices and in devotional service in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but they weren't able to articulate that philosophy in order to defeat the Mayavadis. How's that sound?
Yeah, I just understand better the concept of pure devotee, because generally I got
Yeah, pure devotees means that they didn't have any other motivation than to serve the Lord. But they weren't very philosophically fixed up, which was one of the reasons why the Goswamis sent their literature to Bengal with Shyamananda and was it Lokanath? No. Who? Can't hear. Yes, Narottam Das. So they were given the writings of the Goswamis and they took them to Bengal, so that the Bengali devotees would have a philosophical basis of practice, which wasn't there at that time. Yeah.
Just another, to me it's more understanding Kanishta also more a bit all is related to his interaction with others.
Yeah, take your mask off because I can't hear.
Kanishta more related his limitation in interacting with others, in the sense that
Yes, that's right. That's right. It was in relation to their interactions with others, and that was that they were not strong philosophically.
Basic knowledge in that sense.
Yes, yeah.
In that, can we understand that their relationship with other devotees, not necessarily at the level of pandits, but with the other.
But they were still, their heart was in the right place. And they didn't doubt Lord Chaitanya, and they didn't doubt the process of devotional service, but they weren't philosophically astute enough to be able to defend their position. Or even, they were affected by the criticism of the Mayavadi sannyasis. They were affected by that. And they were criticizing Lord Chaitanya. And so they came back to Lord Chaitanya and they told him of their criticisms. And then he defeated he defeated their arguments. And he said, my spiritual master told me that I was a fool and that I should chant Hare Krishna. So that's what I do. And of course, what's not stated, is unstated, I suppose, is that the devotees are actually highly philosophical. Why? Because we study the Bhagavatam, and the Bhagavatam is considered to be the Nigama Kalpataro Phalitam, Galitam Phalam. It's a ripened fruit of the tree of Vedic knowledge. And so that all of the conclusions of the Vedas are contained within the pages of the Bhagavatam. And so the devotees arrive at the highest realizations of spiritual truth by studying the Bhagavatam. And so, the criticism of the Mayavadis was that Lord Chaitanya wasn't studying the scripture, but of course he did. He would regularly recite the Bhagavatam. That's why we do it. And that's how the heart's purified of these, or is able to, we're able to discern what is what is permanent and what is temporary, and distinguish between the two, and choose the permanent. Okay? Grantaraj Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Hare Krishna.